Lewis Baraliakos, aka Lewba. Welcome to the show, mate. How's it going?
Hey, thanks for having me. I'm
Mate,
good, man.
yeah, bloody pleasure, dude. Honestly, me and this guy got a lot of history. We used to do radio together back in the day on Bondi Beach Radio, and I've never met a man that's been more obsessed with buying records than this dude. When I tried to get you on, mate, I asked you if you wanted to do some stuff around music production because you do produce. You got a banging setup there at your house. But what you basically told me was that while you haven't got that many releases, one thing that you have got a lot of knowledge on is the vinyl buying and vinyl collecting and digging. And this is something that you've been doing for a really, really, really long time. So I guess we've pivoted and let's talk about vinyl for a bit.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
Nice one, dude. So how did you get into buying records? What was the progression to getting into music and then starting to buy? Let's start there.
All right. Well, buying records was kind of always a natural thing because both of my parents are musicians, and particularly my dad had a really big vinyl collection, which now he's living in Greece. He's moved over to Greece, so I own dad's big vinyl collection, which is great.
Holy shit.
But yeah, he had a very big record collection, and growing up, I kind of was always pretty interested in it. A lot of jazz, a lot of funk, Headhunters, obviously Herbie Hancock,
Yep.
and lots of Earth, Wind and Fire and Stevie Wonder and all that stuff. And I just was absolutely obsessed with it. I remember the first time I went on a car trip with him, and he played me some Earth, Wind and Fire. Then we got back, and he pulled out the record and showed me, and it was just wow, instant love. And then through that, I'm not that old, so this was quite an old record at the time. But I remember I heard Rocket, which is another was the first hit record that had scratching on it.
Okay.
And I remember going to my dad's turntable and scratching on it and breaking his needle, and he wasn't very happy about that because it was quite a nice hi-fi needle or whatever, quite a nice turntable. So sorry, Dad. But I guess because of that, I kind of developed developed a bit of an obsession from early on. Like I remember him taking me to Revolve to go digging when I was like 8 or 9 or something like that.
Wow.
And then as I got older, I started to be able to access money, and it was just something that was always kind of really natural for me to do. Yeah, for sure.
And obviously we met through electronic music. How much had you been buying prior to the kind of introduction to electronic music that we were listening to at the time? Dubstep and kind of drum and bass, garage, all that stuff.
Well, to be honest with you, not that much, because a lot of the stuff that I was into prior to getting into electronic music, I got into, like, my dad had on vinyl already. So as I said, it would have been a lot of Earth, Wind and Fire. I was really obsessed with it.
Okay.
A lot of Stevie Wonder. Dad had all those albums, so it was great. I just would listen to them like that.
Yeah.
But then around the age of maybe I think 12 or 13, I started getting I saw my cousin working out listening to a Ministry of Sound album.
Okay.
And I think it was like an Armand Van Helden tune, and then from there I got really into that, and then happened to find my way into the record store in Sydney. Where someone was playing a Skepta record or something, and I was like, okay, here we go. That's it. And then so around then, I guess that would have been 2010. So that was when I started buying electronic records. Because it was just the moment I kind of found them, I was quite hooked on them. But the thing then was really dubstep, and which was how I met you, Kieran. If you remember, we actually met in the record store during that period where I was just obsessed with vinyl. And I was just buying everything at that point in time. It was like I would buy I would buy anything that I liked, and I think as well it was quite an interesting period in UK dance music time, like in the timeline, because that was also around the time that dubstep was kind of becoming like post dubstep, where
Yep.
it was like it was kind of fusing a little bit with like house music and garage and like a whole bunch of other influences, like even Baltimore Club was getting in there, so there was a whole bunch of different stuff. And so for me, as I was maybe 19, 20 at the time, this is fast forward a few years, because at that point I've, I've been buying maybe like just a lot of dubstep, but a lot of kind of everything at that point since I'd been 15, and I hadn't really been too serious, but I just liked buying. And then by the time I got to about 19 or 20, that's when I started to start to seriously buy records, but not really fully understand digging culture yet. It took me a really long time to get into digging culture. I think that for anybody who's wanting to get into digging culture, there's or the idea of like a culture around digging, I think there's a big learning curve. It starts like I started a lot of the time just buying everything for a few years, and then you kind of start to realize what's good and what's bad, and then like you think, and it's kind of like that curve of like what you think. What's that curve called? Where it's like how much you think you know, and like when you think you know a lot, and then you actually realize you know nothing.
Yep.
So it's like when you start, you're really keen, and you think you know everything about records after a couple of years, but then you realize just how deep this whole wormhole is. And for me, at least, it took me like a good, I would say, 10 years till I felt like I was properly digging. But anyway, back to the timeline. Back to that timeline of what I was talking about before. By the time I was about 20, I was starting to like DJ gigs that were paid, and I was starting to buy a lot of records for the purpose of DJing, as opposed to just buying records. And
Right.
that was when that kind of period of that period of like post dubstep was happening, as I was saying, and it was good because it really opened my eyes to not just dubstep, but like a lot of different music and how it kind of all interweaved a little bit, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, for sure.
I got a job working for a record store for about 6 months around then. And that was kind of one of the first like big eye openers for me of how deep, again, going back to this concept of like actually how deep it is to be digging. Like there's so many records out there, and there's so much good music. I think that a lot of people really don't, like, when they start collecting, they think that they know it all, and then they know everything about music, and then it's just such a deep rabbit hole.
Yeah.
When you work in a record store that specializes in secondhand music, secondhand dance music,
Yep.
it's like you realize that there's like maybe 30,000 records on the wall there, and that's just like a little smattering of what's actually out there.
For sure. Yeah, man. So are you buying mostly secondhand these days, or are you still in touch with what's being released today? Because one of the reasons that I stopped buying as much as I went through a period where I was buying, a hell of a lot. But then I just ended, I started to realize that this is a very small, as you say, a very small subsection of the music that exists out there. I'm not going to buy everything. It's almost like it comes to a point where you're like, holy shit, what's the point? Like, you almost give up. Like, it's like a weight that like comes on you. You're like, I'm never, you're never going to reach the end of this. So one of the things that I'm excited for, as I was telling you just before the show, I'm getting a second turntable. I'm redoing the desk here, and I'm looking forward to getting back into buying records, but I don't want to be hunting the new stuff. I want to be hunting the secondhand stuff. So I guess the question I want to ask you is, what tips have you got for people who want to get into digging? What should they be listening for? What should they be doing?
It's a good question. Give me a second to think on that. What should people be listening for? Well, obviously the first thing comes down to personal taste and what you get out of it. One of the things that I find really important when I'm digging is preservation of funds and not doubling up. So I, I'm pretty hardcore. I think a lot more hardcore than a lot of people that I know, in that I don't buy a record if it's got a digital release, because for the only for the reason that um, I I look at my records as a functional item. I'm not someone who's elitist with formats. So it's like if something's available in high quality digitally, I see it to be just as good as something that's available on vinyl. But a lot of the time, especially with older stuff, it's not available in high quality on vinyl. So I think that the first thing people should know when they're digging is that, or try and think about, is that if you can get something digitally, maybe don't pay $50 for the record, because you could pay $50 for another record that is unavailable elsewhere, that is always is sick. And like $50 is quite a bit of money as well. But it's not an unreasonable amount of money. Like I've definitely spent $50 on many records.
Yeah.
But it'll come out of your bank account, and you won't be able to maybe buy that other $50 record that is there, but you can't get digitally for $3 or whatever.
That's a
So
really
I think,
good tip. You could even get like, I don't know, 25 $2 records. You know, you could get way more bang for your buck. That's awesome.
yeah. So I think that, like, I mean, I think it's really, really important to try and make try and make your money go as far as possible when you're buying records, because otherwise you just end up with maybe like 3 records that kind of.
So are you like a secondhand record store owner's worst nightmare? How you're digging through stuff, maybe listening to it, and then checking Discogs to see if it exists, digitally?
Yep. I am record owner's worst nightmare, and I don't really want to say that publicly, to be honest, because I hate having record store people looking at me while I'm digging. But I think that you'd be stupid not to make the most of the internet while you're digging, because record store owners definitely are doing it. When you go to a record, how many times do you go to a record store and you walk in and you look at a record and you go, oh, that's a sick record, I've been looking for that, and then it's like $50, and then you look on Discogs and like the median price is dead on $50. It's like, if a record store owner is pricing it according to Discogs, then why shouldn't you be able to go and look in and go, oh, actually, this is actually like a good deal, or I don't want to spend $50 on this because I can get it for $3 here,
Yeah. What was it like the moment that you found Discogs?
I'd been getting ripped off really hard by a specific record store in Sydney, and like I would go there a lot, and they would sell me records that were so good, but so expensive for what they were at the time. And I remember just discovering it and being like, wow, this record that I paid $50 for, which is an amazing record. Well, maybe I didn't pay $50. Actually, back in the day, records were a lot cheaper. But this record that I paid like $25 for, I can get for $2. Like I specifically remember importing a Dark One record, which is a really sick record, Said the Spider, for heaps of money, like maybe $50-$60 up there. But you can get that on Discogs for $2. And I think that that's kind of one of the ways that digging has really changed over the last 10 years as well, is records that these super hype DJs back then thought were really cool because they played them, and they kind of just made some arbitrary value judgment on them, are not actually, like, they might be really readily available online and around the world. And I think that that's one of the magic things about Discogs, is like now we actually we have a relatively good idea of of rarity. It's maybe not so much with all types of music, but with dance music, I think we have a relatively good idea of the availability and the price of a lot of records.
Yeah, it makes it much more transparent. You know, you don't have to trust what someone's telling you about a record. You can do your own research, and because it's such a, yeah, like a crowdfunded isn't the right word, but it's a community of people helping to share the knowledge of what vinyl exists out there in the world. And it's vinyl, right? Not vinyls.
It is vinyl, not vinyls. Vinyls is not a word. Vinyl is the plural of vinyl.
Yeah, I like it. I like it. Cool. Okay, cool. So what period of vinyl collection are you in now? What are you buying these days?
Uh I mean, these days I'm obsessed with what a lot of people consider like the dirtiest dance, like the dirty word of dance music, which is like tech house and minimal stuff. I love that
Really?
stuff so much. Yeah. Um, I've always had a bit of a love of like minimalism in general,
Mhm.
um, but I just I just feel like I don't know. It's like it's the most pure kind of form of dance music, in my opinion, that
Wow.
there is really. Yeah, because a lot of like good tech house is just like it's just like a beat and a bass line, and like where dubstep is similar. It's like a beat and a bass line. Dubstep's more like rooted in the 4/4, whereas in the like halftime thing, and like has a lot more dub influences. Like tech house definitely, like good tech house definitely has a bit of that kind of dub spacey stuff,
Yeah.
and it's essentially just like effects, kick, bass line, like all the good stuff, but it's more on in the 4/4 tip. So I think it's really good for it's just really fun to dance to, and it's pretty accessible. Like anyone can really enjoy it, and um, it's yeah, it's a pretty fun music to dance to. I mean, I don't really like the ultra commercial stuff that I think is what a lot of people talk about when they talk about like the dirty word of tech house. But for
Yep.
me, the early records are really interesting. Like Terry Francis and Craig Richards, and all that stuff.
Yep.
But I think like as I mentioned to you earlier, there's been like a whole lot of periods of me collecting that have kind of led me to this. And like I suppose one of the things was when I was working at that record store, like I would obviously I had a massive collection to dig through, and I would find stuff, and um, it wouldn't mean much to me because I wasn't really collecting that stuff there.
Mhm.
And at that time on Discogs, my personal collection was open, so anyone could view it. And um, yeah, and I would archive everything that I buy on Discogs would go straight into my collection the day I bought it, which I still do. But because it was open, a lot of people would hit me up randomly, and they would just be like, "Oh, do you want to sell this record because there's no other copies available on Discogs or whatever?"
Okay. Yeah.
And through that, a lot of those people that hit me up, I sometimes would just check them out. I would just kind of suss them out a little bit. Who is this random person from Italy who
Yeah.
wants to buy this obscure record? And I kind of followed that thread a lot, and found like basically this whole other scene of DJs. Over a lot of them based in Europe, but some of them are here as well. But that were really like collecting, like digging really heavily and just playing like stuff that wasn't necessarily what I was hearing in the mainstream so much, like in the mainstream kind of what you're hearing in clubs at the moment. And like it was really interesting. Like one specific memory was there was this record that I bought at the store, and this guy hit me up. His name was Hitcham, who's actually quite a well known DJ, but I had no idea who he was.
Yeah.
And he hit me up, and he wanted to buy this Italian record off me, and he bought it off me for like $20 or something like that. and then like I went on Discogs like a week later, and it was like $300.
Oh
It had gone
shit.
up. It had gone up like $300, and it was kind of what was happening a lot with this scene that I started kind of following the threads of, is like a lot of these DJs were really digging deep, and then they'd find something and they'd play it, and there was all these people that were really, 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 really on the pulse of it, and it would just blow up straight away to those prices. Like you still see this a lot at the moment, where there's a lot of secondhand records that any certain DJ might play in a popular set, and it'll go from $2 to 300 in one day, kind of thing. It's
Really?
wild. Yeah, for sure, for sure. I'm trying to think of a good example.
Is it almost like they're looking for things that, number one, sound good, but number two, had a limited release, but maybe don't have the recognition that they feel they deserve, so they're almost buying them to play them to make them more well known, to increase the price, not in like an investment kind of way, but it's almost like a game.
Yeah, it is almost like a game, and I think that's kind of the fun of digging. But it's not, you're not buying something necessarily because you want to increase the price at all. But I think that what that kind of side of it is about is it's just about finding stuff that's forgotten. It's almost like dub plate culture in a way, because it's like kind of like finding the best thing that nobody knows about, that nobody's heard in 30 years or 20 years or however long, and
Yeah.
it's just totally forgotten. And because it's so forgotten, there's only a limited amount of stock available, and so it's just about finding kind of the baddest tune, and then yeah, playing it and then seeing the reaction. But it is, I suppose it's not a good thing, because I mean, at the end of the day, the people that are getting the money is the sharks, is the people that are just kind of profiting off like the leeches, I guess. But it's the cool side of it is like finding those records that are dope, and then exposing them, and then people being like, oh, and like having that reaction of like, wow, that's an amazing record.
Yeah. That's awesome. Do you cut your own dub plates ever?
I I think I've cut one dub plate. I mean, I do want to start cutting some dub plates of things, but I kind of made the decision not to, because I think that like nowadays, if I wanted to cut dub plates, I would need people to be making the kind of music that I like, and the kind of music that I often collect is a bit older. So yeah, it's hard, because to get that old sound, you kind of, I mean, you can do it now, whatever, but like a lot of the time, it's just not. I think if I started cutting dub plates, they'd all sound really modern, and I'd be
Yeah.
playing stuff that sounded really modern. But what I do want to start doing is like working on maybe reworking older tunes and stuff like that, and then cutting from dub plate with in those cases.
Yeah.
I think it's an interesting concept though, because like yeah, it's a similar kind of thing to what we were talking about before, of just it's about like having almost a one-off. Well, in the case of dubplate, it is a one-off thing, but in the case of like really obscure rare records or whatever, that's also um it's almost a one-off that you'd have to be pretty clued in to know about it in the first place. So
Yeah, yeah,
they kind
yeah.
of tie in a lot as well.
For sure. You do make your own music. Would you consider cutting dub plates of your own stuff, so that, because otherwise you can't play it in a set, right?
Well, I don't play it vinyl only.
Oh, do you not?
No, I don't. I buy a lot of vinyl, which is why I play a lot of vinyl.
Yeah.
But as I said, like I'm not really like elitist in any way. So I could play play anything digitally that I made.
Yeah.
I just like the idea of having physicals. Like for me, the only real thing about vinyl that wins over against digital, and it's quite minor, is the fact that it's physical and it's something that you can tangibly hold or whatever. So I quite like the idea of, if I did press some dubs, to just have stuff in my bag that I can just whip out. And if I was playing anywhere with turntables, like it's easy.
Mm-hmm.
It's easier than, I think, like, it's easier to remember that you've got them as well than it is to kind of scroll through a USB and be like, oh, and then you kind of find the tune, unless you've prepared for it, if you know what I mean.
Yeah, absolutely. How often are you culling records? Because that's something that I know that you do on a fairly regular basis, getting rid of the, cleansing, if you will.
Every day I'm culling, because yeah, like, it started it's become a bit of an obsession over COVID, actually, because it started with I was just getting rid of everything that I owned that had a digital release, and then just buying the digitals, and then um and then spending all the extra money back on records that didn't have a digital release, which was really sick. Like, I really recommend everyone does it. I mean, some people are probably going to hate me for saying that, but I really recommend everybody does it, because, like, it just helps your collection so much.
Yeah.
But I also think that as we grow older, our taste just matures and changes. And so it's like, maybe you don't like the same things that you did 10 years ago. And even though you've got them and they've got a sentimental value, sometimes it's just worth getting rid of them. Like, I even got rid of all my DMZ records recently, which was like, my inner dubstepper was like, Lewis, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But my, like, me having these records, it was like, $300 for anti-war dub, or like I could just get 10 whatevers, like,
Yeah.
things that I'm going to really play and love, or even just blind buys. Like, yeah, like, that to me is
What's a
very, very
blind
much.
buy?
So a blind buy is when you buy a record without knowing necessarily what it is. You just kind of look at it and go, oh, that looks really sick.
Yeah, right.
And
Yeah, I know what you mean. I
and
was in Germany recently and there was some random, like, hang on, I think I got it here. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, I just thought the cover of that looked sick.
yeah,
It was
sick.
like super culty. And then on the back it's got like a bunch of random pictures of like it turns out it's a Bavarian like folk music.
So do you like the record or do you not like it?
I mainly got it to try sampling it, and I ain't listening because the thing is, dude, right now I don't listen to vinyl in my like private time. It's like like I play music digitally through Tractor right now, and I don't have just like a single turntable to actually just listen on.
Sure.
That's something that I
Yeah.
want to change, but the missus is already sick of all the fucking gear that I buy, and she probably says that we don't need another one.
Yeah, it's not the most it's not the most convenient of formats, really.
Yeah.
And that was kind of another reason why I did a big cull was because, like, I had a lot of albums as well,
Yeah.
and I just I would rather listen to them like on Spotify or something like that, because it was just easier.
Yeah.
It's just like, you just put it on, put your headphones on and listen, whereas you don't have to turn the record over or whatever. Like, obviously, if a record is like super limited vinyl only release or album, I'll still buy it and I'll still listen to it in that setting. But for the most part, like, yeah, it's just not that convenient a lot of the time. Just being
Yeah.
like, okay, I'm sitting down, I'm vibing, and I've got to go turn this record over or whatever.
Yeah.
It's not like it's a tiny thing, but it's not as easy as just listening to the
No, for sure.
MP3.
It's a very manual process, but that's kind of the beauty of it, you know. So is that what you don't just listen to vinyl. You listen to Spotify, you've got your digital stuff as well. You're totally into that's good, man. That's awesome.
Actually, I shouldn't say Spotify, because I've totally boycotted Spotify, because
It's just become the
Spotify.
word like Google. Yeah, just Google it. Yeah, no, I've got
Yeah.
Spotify, meaning you stream music. What are your
Yeah.
streaming services? What do you use?
Uh, I use Tidal.
Nice. Of course you do. With the high quality.
Totally.
Very nice. And in terms of a good listening turntable, just a single on its own, what can you recommend?
Ooh, that's a hard question. There's a lot of turntables out there. There's vintage ones. There's new ones. The one that I have down here, that's my listening turntable, is from a company called Project. It's a debut carbon.
Yep.
It's a decent price. I think like it's about maybe 500 Australian dollars.
Yep.
Which I think maybe is I'm not sure, but I think that might be a bit upper, like a bit more expensive than most people's budget for a turntable. So you can go lower with project stuff.
Mm-hmm.
They have other turntables, but I think they make really quite good ones in the lower budget. When because the thing with budgets is like mine could be different to yours, but also with turntables and stuff, you can go up. You could spend $100,000 on a turntable
Yeah.
and a needle and like it's just insane. So yeah, that what I just said is like really dependent on budget, but I think they're quite good for low end kind of listening turntable for your home.
Cool.
Yeah,
And what needle
for
would you
sure.
pair that with? I'm
It
asking for
comes
my
with
purposes now because I want one.
yeah,
So
that's all right.
I'm
That's all
going
right.
shopping after this, basically.
It comes with an Autophon 2M, 2M Red, which is a decent needle. It's an elliptical, so you can't back cue on it. So you can't really DJ with it, obviously.
No. Yep.
It's specifically for listening.
It's the needle
But
you fucked up of your dad's.
yeah, exactly. That is exactly the one.
Yeah.
So it comes with a 2M. I personally am a fan of a Japanese company called Nagaoka.
Okay.
So I'm looking to upgrade mine to a Nagaoka pretty soon. I think they're just really nice, well-rounded needles.
Yep.
They, yeah, they sound very warm. I've noticed.
Okay.
They and like I don't know. I don't like when I listen to vinyl. Which is, as I said, it's quite a rare occasion. But when I do listen to it, I like it to sound like warm, and I don't really like it to sound really like bright and like sharp.
Yep.
And I personally, again, this is really everybody has their own different opinion on this and a different approach. But I find that like some of the Autophon cartridges can be quite bright, and because they don't track as well as the Nagaoka ones, um, they just they kind of distort a little bit in the top, and it just doesn't sound super nice. Whereas
Yeah,
I found
right.
I found the Nagaoka ones just really nice and warm, and they track really well. So
Yeah.
they're just pretty.
There was a
pretty-
track that I played on the show recently on vinyl. I actually busted this out for my Saturday show, and playing it next to all the digital stuff, the top end was immediately so much less.
Yeah, for sure.
Probably because my needle might suck. I thought it was relatively new, but I haven't used it for so long. I thought that might be the case, but just in the comparison, I ended up needing to leave the top end of the track I was coming out just on a loop so that it kind of felt cohesive,
Whoa.
if you know what I mean.
Hectic. Yeah.
Like it was a
for sure.
really big drop in the top end, so noticeable. Obviously, you blended it out. I blended it out, but it was just one of them. And it's just like, I don't know. Is that the needle? Is that just, or is that, as you say, that's just the warmer sound of vinyl, you know?
No, I don't think that's it. I definitely think that it can also be some of the preamps that are put in DJ mixes
Yep.
now. Like I've noticed that like you'll see that a lot of like vinyl nerds are also DJ mixer nerds
Yep.
as well. So like that's kind of where this whole like rotary mixer, like high end analog mixer idea comes from is because it's like with some of the lower end Pioneer products, the preamps in them just aren't that good, and so you notice that you notice when you're mixing a record with a digital track, it's like the record comes in and it just sounds flat. It just sounds like it just loses a lot of like it's the dynamics. Where the digital track, which is designed to work with like a Pioneer turntable or whatever, is like super high quality, and that's coupled with the fact that it is digital as well. So like digital and analog in themselves, and there's not really that much difference once you get really high quality. But um the whole like with vinyl, the actual technicality of putting something to vinyl, you've got to do a whole lot of stuff, like a whole lot of things. That's why things are mastered specifically for vinyl. It's like
Yep.
quite a process. And so the end result of vinyl is that it usually sounds a bit different. If you have a tune that you've pressed to vinyl and then you have the same tune digitally, it's gonna probably sound a little bit probably sound a little bit different to the version that's digital, which will probably be a bit louder,
Yep.
less compressed, more compressed. But hey, like I personally am not such a fan of like over like squashing something, like
Yep.
compressing it really hard. So in a way it's kind of good because it means that if you buy a record like that has been mastered for vinyl and released on vinyl, sometimes it'll sound like quite dynamic. And yeah, going back to that whole point of nerds being obsessed with um, rotary mixers, myself included. I think that having a really nice preamp that's designed to sound good with not just vinyl but like anything means that um, you can kind of bring in tracks digitally and on vinyl, and they sound pretty much the same. It's like a level playing field.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. How do you rate the Allen and Heath Zone 92?
Quite good. I was DJing on one a couple of weeks ago in for like a proper rave, and
Nice.
um, it was it was good. It was like the transitions between the two were really perfect.
Beautiful. And what's your rotary mixer of choice?
My rotary mixer of choice. That's an interesting question. So I rotary mixers are really expensive.
They are.
I'll preface this like they're really expensive, and I've been saving for one for a really long time, like years. And so I was borrowing probably my second favorite mixer, which is the Rain MP 2016. So not the latest one that you see Rain selling now, but the one that was before that, which was all analog.
Yep.
Um, it's yeah. The only problem, like the Rain for me was like the perfect mixer, but the only problem is that they're quite old, and so getting parts for them is a pain. And most of the ones that are still in service now have got like they just don't sound as nice as some of the really modern mixers. So the one that I've ordered is from a London-based company called Isanoe. Um, they also made like floating points mixer, and they make like big install mixers as well.
Yep.
But yeah, this one's the ISO 420, and I like it because well, it's transistor based, so it's like super duper duper clean, fully analog. But yeah, my hopes for it are that it's got the same kind of vibe when you're mixing vinyl and digital, and it's just really clean and really nice. It's almost like having a mixer in between your turntables is almost pointless with it because it adds so little color to it.
Yep.
It's like it almost doesn't exist. All it is just a fader. But really, if you were to take it out of the chain, it would sound exactly the same.
That's so interesting, dude. Mate, we've run out of time. I feel like we could have kept going for quite a while. I'll definitely have to have you back for another go. Where can people find you online, mate? Is there anything that you need to be promoting right now? You got gigs coming up.
Yeah, we do. So I run a party with Slam and Revive Pleasure and DJ Bernard, and a bunch of my other friends. Sorry if I've forgotten anybody. It's called Brighter Days.
Yep.
And we have a warehouse party coming up on December the 17th.
Amazing.
Yeah, so it's going to be me and Revive Pleasure, and running it with Oblique, which is another crew from Sydney who very into their digging also. And yeah, so it's me and Revive Pleasure playing back to back, and then three of the residents from Oblique also playing. And then Brighter Days has a bunch of other parties coming up as well. So definitely you can follow me on my page Lewba, or you can join the Brighter Days group. So just go on Facebook and look for Brighter Days, and you can get in there and find out more about our events over the summer.
That's fucking awesome, man. All the links to everything that he just mentioned are going to be down in the description below, mate. It's been a bloody pleasure chatting to you, Lewba, mate. Thank you so much for joining.
Catcha.
Cheers.
Hello, legend. Thank you so much for watching all the way till the end. If you like that, I got a ton more of these interviews being uploaded constantly on the YouTube page. And I do a weekly mix on Mixcloud every Saturday. So if you can subscribe, like, comment, that helps out loads with the algorithm. And if you follow me everywhere and you like the sound of what's going on here, let me know. I'm always open to hearing from people. This is very new. I'm figuring it out as I go along. But yeah, there's tons more. Check out the other interviews. Follow me. Listen. Jump onto the live stream. Say hi. I'm a friendly dude, and I really appreciate you watching. So thank you so much. You're a fucking legend. Love ya. Peace. Bye.